do know a lot about the birds, the bats. We can, we don't need to make any, we've already done some extensive study, but it certainly helps to have a body of work. We have, Howard had 2 years worth of post-construction monitoring of both birds and bats, and Cohocton had that, and I don't know if any of you know, Cohocton is going to be repowering. So, but their repower is going to be different. They are going to keep the towers, and they are going to top off the nacelles and put on new nacelles. So, which is, I was interested to hear that they were doing that, but it made sense, I guess, from a cost-benefit analysis to do it that way as opposed to just remove them all and so that's, like I said,
And you're saying 2022?
I think 22 would be the best case scenario.
That's when it's going to start?
That would be start of construction.
Okay.
Is the best case scenario that you could have. I don't know what COVID would do to that. I don't know what anything would do to that. Again, going back to what you guys may remember, the long pole in the tent generally is the interconnection process, and it will be the same way this time. It is, the phrase I've always used is, the utility has to allow you to connect to their lines. They just don't have to allow you to do it quickly. And that's the issue. It's just a matter of time.
Where will the point of contact be?
230 kV that runs, they call it, the section that we'd be connecting to is the Meyer to Avoca line. But that's the big 230 kV that runs. It runs all the way up. I'm not sure if it follows exactly 390, but it comes at an angle from Avoca and then continues far north. I assume it goes all the way up to Rochester. I'm not positive.
So that would probably, the closest it would be over into the Avoca than in the town
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah,
So you won't be tying in on Brown Hill?
very close to there, yes. So what's existing now, there is the existing substation, which is the substation for the Cohocton project. It's actually called the Canandaigua substation. Then right next to it is going to be the Barren Winds substation. This guy who sort of was smart when he started the Barren Winds project took that land. Now I'm kicking myself for doing that because I would love to interconnect this one, but I'm connecting pretty close to there. So there just wasn't enough real estate that was flat enough once Barren Winds puts theirs next to Cohocton. So I'm on, the gentleman's name is Thomas Walter, and he has turbines as well as I'm going to put the substation on this land.
So that's up on Waterbury Hill?
Yes. And that's really, as soon as things come out, there may be some mailing lists from the state on, the process. I'll have to, and I can always, send you guys something, hey, look, sign up to this listserv because you'll get emails updating you on, you might want to poke around and just look at Department of Public Service website. I get some information, but it's spotty. I just think they're overwhelmed right now. Everybody's working virtual. It's just not, it's not the process that they'd like it to be. But I think things are loosening up in Albany. I think people are, it's getting a little better. You guys, New York is one of the states that's actually doing very well with this whole thing.
Unless you're in a nursing home.
True.
What's the height in Avoca and Patrick?
It'll be the same height. Yeah, there will be no, generally speaking, when you build these, there can be times where you would use a lower tower. Generally speaking, you build the same tower, you buy the same equipment, you do that. I have seen, and actually at my old company, we couldn't get waivers from property setbacks in a couple places, and we used smaller towers. Generally speaking.
Is that 1.5 times on setbacks or no?
We're designing with 1.5 times we're designing with, well, let me step back. So you have your setbacks from property boundaries, from residences, and what most people don't realize is The setback distance-wise from residences does not overrule a sound study. And the sound study, what I can tell you is that the sound requirements would be tougher than your existing law. It would be tougher than the law that we built to back in '08, what did it go, 9 or 10, I don't remember exactly. But the design standards would be tougher than those ones there. And what they have is, they have a sound standard for a participating residence. A participating residence is higher than a non-participating residence. But like I said, a non-participating resident would have more protection under that law than they would under the Howard law. I don't think the Howard law there was anything wrong with it, just the state has decided to move that up a notch in terms of that. Now, what I can tell you is, they have not released the setbacks from homes and the setbacks from property lines. We're designing with 1.5 from the property lines and 1,500 feet from the non-participating residents. But honestly, it'll be greater than 1,500 feet simply because of the sound requirements of what they are. And even here the requirements, I still remember this because I wrote it so many times. I'm basically recollecting. The setback was 1,000 feet from residences here. The average setback was about 1,350 feet. And that was because of the sound. That's always going to be the case. And I can tell you, because I still remember this vividly, one of the setbacks that was bringing down that average was, if you guys remember Sanford and Sally Sparks, they asked me to put a turbine much closer to their home than I was inside the 1,000 feet. They had to sign a waiver, they did all that, but that's what they wanted as a participating resident. So that actually brought the average down as opposed to other residents.
No, you're gonna have a good neighbor contract?
We will, yep, the same
Now,
thing.
how much is that?
Varies depending on, depending on
Is it
landowner.
2,500, 2,000, 1,000?
It's higher than that, yeah.
What is it?
You'll speak to them, if that's a private contract between people, but I can tell you it's higher than that. So, I don't give out terms of our agreements, and I don't give out terms of our good neighbor agreements. If people want to share those, they're under no confidentiality agreements, but I think generally people like to keep their business private. But, I want to be clear on a couple things. Nothing under this new law gives us any extra or eminent domain, or, the state's not going crazy. But what the state is doing is they're saying, okay, here's what we think are the minimum levels you should meet all these, and you will get a permit for the project, as long as you have willing landowners to do it, whatever. The state will not override if, Lowell doesn't want to give a setback waiver or a good neighbor agreement, well then, the state's not going to come in and say, no, you must waive that. The state's going to say, did you meet these minimum requirements? If so, then here's a permit. If not, that's the case. Under Article 10, what they did, for example, under Article 10, you would do a sound study and you would present your sound contour lines, which show, the expected sound at a certain property. And then you'd have to argue for a certain sound standard. They're removing that. They're saying the sound standard at a non-participating residence is going to be 45 dBA at certain times for a weighted average, what have you. For a participating resident, it's going to be 55 dBA for certain times and what have you. It's non-negotiable. It must be met or exceed that amount. So that's the way that they hope will cause projects to design to a safe standard and be built quicker, if that makes any sense. And
in pre-construction now, when you come in, before you're gonna go for all these roads and stuff?
oh, yes, so we will do the same thing that we did back in the day. You do pre and post-construction videotaping, core sampling, the whole 9 yards.
No, I'm gonna suggest you videotape during too.
That's a pretty easy thing to do. That's no problem. I don't think we had, I will say, I remember, and again, it's a different company. I recall that the biggest problems we had were in May, when it was, chilly, and we weren't sure of freeze thaw. The other thing we had was dust control. I think we should have used a little bit more brine here than we did, as opposed to just regular water. I think those, I recall, and I'm Don, I don't know if you guys remember, Lowell, if you remember, but I remember those being, with the roads, I think we did a pretty good job of keeping them on a haul route. I don't think those were complaints. In fact, I remember Andy being mad that the truckers couldn't come to his spot back in the day to get a sandwich or whatever. So that's all definitely stuff. I'm hopeful that the county, and I haven't spoken to the county about their road use agreement, I'm hopeful that the county does it the same way that they did last time. Because last time they calculated, here's the mileage that you're on my roads, here's the type of roads, you write me a check for this and we'll take care of it. That's so much easier than, some of these municipalities doing it in a different way. But the road use agreement will
Well,
be.
you're a bond per mile.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, the nice thing about that one was, they told us in.
On that bondage though, it's gonna be on what class that road is.
Yes.
When it's engineered.
Yes.
And board and everything.
But what I'm saying is, what was nice is the county, we just wrote them a check, we knew in advance, plus or minus whatever material was gonna be at the end of it. It was just great for planning purposes. It was really pretty easy, so. But the other thing is that, I know that Jamie wasn't involved officially in the first project, but really was in the 2 turbines. But he's on the ball again, and I think he'll work within the new state process to make sure that the money's being divided the way it should be and that sort of thing. The one thing that I know that has been a difficulty that was tried to be helped through legislation was making sure that the schools were able to not adhere to whatever that 2% cap is or whatever and get the pilot money. So I still think that thing had work to do, but with luck it'll get done at some point that happens. So, but I think that any benefit that comes to the town will still be the same that comes to the town. And I assume those checks are still clearing, so.
They have.
Kevin, you
Yes.
mentioned our project here that we have is 52.5
Yes.
megawatts, and then you said, imagine 4 turbines. That would be a 13 megawatt turbine. I don't think there's any turbines that big.
No. I said, imagine that it was 5 megawatts and you were getting the revenue of a fifth of you had a fifth of the project. This is what I meant to say, is you had a fifth of the project, and then you got that same amount of revenue. No, there are no. The biggest offshore, I think right now, is, I've heard some grumblings about a 10 megawatt offshore, but I can imagine that those will get even bigger. I think offshore will certainly get exponentially bigger, but I'm not so sure about offshore. So that's, take this as the beginning of the conversation. I think over the next couple of months, as the regulations come out, I can send those regulations out just so you guys know. Like I said, we're pretty sure that the sound standards are going to be sound standards that were adopted for Cassadaga, Barren Winds, 8 Point, and there's several in the area. Setbacks, I think, are to be determined, to be worked on. I think that some of the other details with the, like, are people going to get a bill credit, or are people going to get, or is there going to be a general public community I think those kind of things are going to be tweaked, but I'm guessing sound standard is probably in their mindset. I'd say probably setbacks are being tweaked, but I can definitely see it being no less than 1.2 to a property line, and probably going to end up at 1.5 to a property line for a fall zone.
Have you got a map where these are going?
Nope, don't have a layout yet.
When is soon gonna get a hauler?
Like I said, in a couple of weeks, we're hopeful. Part of the biggest holdup on that is simply getting agreements with landowners who wanted to sign up, or those who didn't want to sign up. COVID really put the brakes on things. We spent.
I just don't want you to come 3 months to me before the project's gonna start, give me a haul route and a map and showing where these things are going.
Well, again, it still needs to go through the permitting process. That hasn't started yet, and the project at the earliest would be 2022. So I can promise you that it won't be 3 months before that you'll get all that sort of stuff.
In our other project, we had more than 6 months.
Yeah,
We
generally,
knew the road layout.
generally the way these, just so you know, generally the way these projects work in the Northeast is, depending on when you get your permit, sometimes it impacts it, sometimes it doesn't. You will start planning for the project around this time. Okay, this is when we hire our contractors, start to do all the final preparations. And we will, by the fall of the prior year, we'll finance it. So we'll give you probably in November, hey, here's all your documentation that you had from the summer, from the permitting documents, which show haul routes, which show all of that. Then sometime in the fall, before the project starts in March, you will get the go-ahead, hey, we're going ahead. You will have meetings with the contractor, and if you guys, some of you guys remember, we had meetings with the contractor and the fire department and road use and all of those things. The other reason why you're protected and nothing will be sprung upon you is we can't run on your roads until we have a road use agreement. I'm certain you won't give us a road use agreement until you know where we're hauling and what we're using. So
Yeah, I wanna know where you're gonna put your lay down areas too.
they may or may not even be in the town of Howell.
You don't think so?
All to be determined. What it depends upon is, first of all, availability of nice flat land for that. Secondly, how many turbines might be in the town of Howard. So we don't, we simply don't know. And we don't know the haul routes yet. We did do a preliminary haul route study, but that did not include a good portion of Avoca and any of Howard. So we'll have to do that again, and we're using, frankly, I'm using the same firm we used for here, which is Creighton Manning, so.
Stay on the roads as much as possible.
We're gonna do what we can. Yeah, we're gonna do what we can, so. So, email address, phone number, which is actually the same phone number I've had since I was here. Email me with questions. There is it's PrattsburghWindFarm.com. And it does have some information on the new permitting scheme, but to be honest with you, the state just hasn't released a whole lot. But as always, send me an email, give me a phone call, send me a text, whatever, and we'll figure it out. Anybody, I'm sorry, I've just been talking to them, anybody here have any questions? Good, I'll get out of your hair and let me know if you need anything. And I think I put 6 copies there, Don, that if that's not enough.
No, that would be fine.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see you again,
Good
Kevin.
seeing you guys again. Now you can say what you really mean about me.